So cautionary tales in China. I think the first one is that there are no secrets in China. So you almost have to assume when you go into a market like China that your suppliers are probably going to copy you. The moment you tell anybody anything that you're working on, right, the assumption is that you just created new competition. Which is, again, if I go back to then your strategy for the market shouldn't just be premised on just from an IP perspective, right? So that's one. Second of all, I think, from a cautionary standpoint, it's important also to understand the compliance situation in China. So it's getting better. I mean, I think now with the government focus on really rooting out corruption within the healthcare system, that I do think that that's changed the environment and landscape, but still that exists as a threat for many people. So, it's something to keep at the back of your mind as you're going into a market like China. It's not necessarily as transparent as what you would find perhaps in some other Western markets. And then the final thing I think also is really around talent. So although they've got 1 billion people, it's not the numbers of people that matter. It's actually finding the right types of people. And that's not necessarily the easiest thing to source in China because to a large extent, finding people, for example, here in the Bay Area where you have a lot of people who have had experiences in device companies and innovation and understanding the process. Innovation in the medical device industry in China actually is a fairly nascent industry. So thinking that you're going to go into the market and be able to automatically find other types of entrepreneurs or people that actually understand how to do device innovation, I think that's a little naive. So that would be something as well that I would caution against. One of the things that surprised me about China, I think, is I've heard stories of it, but I do think that living there now is really anchored in my mind how important relationships are. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is that the business environment in China actually is premised a lot on building relationships and building trust with people that you actually interact with, suppliers, vendors, customers. And to a large extent, actually, that does take time. And it also takes you to step outside of, let's say, a business context to really understand their situation. So you'll find that deals don't happen just across, sort of a typical negotiation table, right? They tend to happen in China, and this is generally true of Asia, over meals, which I think is a common business practice that surprises me because it's actually really more about that partnership in really a relationship that you're building with the other party. One other thing that was surprising to me, I think, from a commercialization angle, lots of people look at China and assume that just because the central government has a tight hold on the country, that in and of itself, that becomes sort of a determining factor in terms of how you do business in China. Actually, that's not the case at all, right? So China today, largely, although healthcare and policies are governed at the central Beijing level, still very much functions at the provincial level. So in order to actually successfully get a product to market, it's not necessarily just going through Beijing. You actually do have to function very much at the individual local state level to be able to get things done. Lots of people don't know that, right? So you go into the market and you're, oh yeah, it's China and it's centralized and therefore everything happens at the snap of fingers. No, it doesn't. Still there's that huge provincial influence at the MOH level that actually also influences how you would commercialize in that market.